I hate this video already. For those of you not in the know, about 2 years ago I went down to Texas with WatchShare. I'm going to have to stop me right there because turns out my memory is roughly equivalent to a goldfish, and it was not 2 years ago that I got the BMW. It was more like 16 months. So I'll be interjecting periodically to correct my terrible math. And brought back a new daily driver in the form of my 2003 BMW 330i ZHP 6MT. That's a lot of words for saying it's a 20-year-old BMW and it has 250,000 miles on it at this point. So I have done something I've very much been avoiding and collected all the receipts I have for this car in one place and created a list here on my laptop. And you can already tell it's bad because I'm having to switch to portrait mode in order to look at it. And the question here is, how much have I spent buying and maintaining this car over the last 2 years? And was it a good idea? So first off, just without naming any numbers, I'm just going to go through everything I've done since August of 2020. It looks like I brought this back in late July. Here we go. I bought a left taillight bulb carrier, a jack pad, the socket terminals and taillight connectors, center support bearing, trim panel clips, butyl tape, lower control arm ×2, oil level sensor, steering coupler, front turn signal sockets, the bi-xenon repair kit for ZKW headlights, front driver window regulator, key fob battery, hub centric rings for the wheels, dashboard trim clips, LED side marker lights, another lower control arm, an accessory drive belt kit, secondary air pump block-off plate, O2 sensor bung, D2S LED bulbs, lollipop bushings, 2 gallons of coolant, radiator, upper and lower radiator hose, expansion tank and mounting plate, another upper radiator hose because the one I bought was bad right out of the box, exhaust Y pipe, rear valence for the bumper, a Vibrant Performance 1149 muffler, rear passenger window regulator, in CarPlay dongle, Dynavent dash kit, and a new head unit, a 4 AWG amplifier wiring kit for the subwoofer that I already had, a new primary O2 sensor, sway bar bushings, driver door vapor barrier, rear trailing arm bushings, tie rod kit, fuel filter, fuel pump, hood emblem grommets, the refurbished ZHP steering rack. I had the bumper, hood, driver fender, and driver doors repainted, side molding clips, side skirt clips, fender well rivets, thermostat assembly, water pump, and Renovolo bite tuner for tuning the car. Now that is a pretty substantial list of stuff, and we're not even completely done yet. Like I said, this car had 250,000 miles on it, and it was pretty darn neglected when I first bought it. I mean, it wasn't as neglected as it could have been, but yeah. An adult-owned garage-kept example of an E46, this was not. Now, I originally purchased the car for $3,700, and it did make the trip back to Wichita with minimal issues. Since then, I have spent $4,550.93. Now, obviously, this is an incomplete list. It's probably missing another $1,000 worth of fluids and small parts that I bought at O'Reilly's and whatnot that I just never got receipts for, never kept the receipts for, and other stuff like the head unit that was actually sponsored and sent to me, and I should probably actually finish the review video for that at some point. Sorry guys. So you can probably figure that there's actually more like $5,500 in repairs and maintenance and modifications into this car since I got it. But altogether, the stuff that I have written down works out to $8,250.93 in 1 year. So over the course of 16 months, let's pull up a calculator here. I typed the wrong number, hang on, there we go. So for the pleasure of owning a 20-year-old 250,000 mile BMW, I've paid $515 a month. On average, not in counting gas and insurance. Whew boy. So now I suppose the question is, what could you lease for that? Now, these days lease deals aren't what they used to be, but back when I bought this, for about $400 a month, you could get into some base model 3 Series BMW or something like that. But I've never driven a modern BMW, so I don't actually know if that would have been a better deal. I mean, obviously it would have been a better deal, but would I have been as happy? You know, a lot of people say that the newer BMWs just don't drive as nice. You know, BMW kind of lost their way or whatever. They're a bit softer, a bit more numb, a bit more just kind of for flexing with, you know, something that you buy in order to impress your friends and not so much for the driving engagement. If only I had one of those that I could drive and see what it was like. So here I stand now with a can of Coke and a question. What if, instead of spending $8,000 over the course of 2 years for a 20-year-old hoopty BMW, I got something a little bit newer for a similar lease payment? Like this 2017 230i, for example. The 2 Series Coupe. This is considered kind of one of the last gasps of classic BMW, front engine, rear wheel drive, decent proportions, before they kind of went all crazy. I actually haven't driven any new BMW, so I don't know if there's any truth to what people have been saying about how the E46, after that, everything kind of became soft and numb and less driver focused. I mean, I have driven some new Minis, so I do know the 2 Series Grand Coupe is absolute dog water, but I haven't driven anything like this before. And why a 2 Series? Well, because it's the only thing I could get my hands on, but also because if you look at it, it's the exact same size as an E46 Coupe. It's what the 3 Series is now. The new 3 Series is absolutely massive. So let's take a look around this thing. Honestly, I like the styling and proportions on these quite a bit. This is probably going to be one of the last good-looking BMWs ever made, because everything now is just trash. But let's take a look in here. It is definitely more modern in here. Oh, we got manual seats. Don't hate that. Yeah, fairly well appointed. Sunroof, lights everywhere. Very BMW feeling, if nothing else. The steering wheel still feels good. Automatic shifter. The center stack is still familiar. Under the hood, we have... Now this is where modern BMWs started to get a little bit weird, because despite this being a 230, it's not a 3-liter engine. Instead, we have a turbocharged 4-cylinder, and it does say twin power, but that doesn't mean twin turbo. It just means a single twin scroll supercharger. Words are meaningless now. Electric cars are called the Turbo S. Who even knows what anything is anymore? Overall, I gotta say, it's a pretty handsome car, especially in this nice blue color that I don't know the paint code of, because apparently BMW stopped just putting it in the engine bay. Also, a little bit of my insight here. I dig it, but how does it drive? That's the important part. I mean, my first impressions aren't bad. The seat's pretty comfortable and everything's pretty easy to get to. And though this car does have auto start stop, it's off by default when I turn on the car. And I'm guessing that's a setting, but I appreciate that it's a setting you can make. Also, the sound system is fantastic. Oh, okay, so they made an automatic shifter weird. You have to push and hold a button on the side while shifting gears. Why? I don't know. Sport Plus with dynamic traction control. Mine doesn't have that. Of course, we got to give this thing as good of a chance as we can, since we're comparing it to what is clearly the best BMW ever made. First impression though, the steering is completely numb. I can feel nothing through. Like, we just drove over a whole bunch of like bumps and stuff. I felt nothing, just like my cold dead heart. But maybe things will shake out a bit more once we get on the highway here. Oh no, there's a truck in front of us. My other first impression, which you didn't hear because copyrighted audio, the sound system in this thing is quite good. This doesn't appear to have a Harman Kardon or any like brand name. Okay, dude in the GMC was getting it just then. Okay, let's see what the acceleration's like though. I hate that on-ramp. It's not bad. It's really not bad. It's probably as quick as my ZHP, if not a little bit faster, though the power delivery is pretty bland. It doesn't really kick you over the head or anything, but it's just linear power, modern 2-liter 4-cylinder things. Not exactly super exciting, and it definitely didn't stir my soul, which is kind of seeming like a trend here. This is coming across to me like a very competent car, albeit not a super enthusiastic one. It rides nice though. I'm a little confused and concerned though. The sunroof isn't rattling, and I thought the rattles in these cars were all factory installed like mine was, but it's silent as a tomb in here. So I'm just gonna leave it in automatic and Sport Plus here and do a quick passing test. It kicks down, it's a responsive automatic. It kicks down immediately, and what do we got here? 8 speeds? 8-speed automatic, that is a lot of speeds. We have heated seats, that's pretty cool. We have parking sensors, that's pretty neat. We have the same infotainment system that was in the i3 that I reviewed a couple weeks ago, which honestly, pretty competent. Leagues better than the old iDrive was. And for the most part, the interior layout of this car is really well done, really nicely executed, and the ride is fantastic. Handling is pending further testing. I am told as we come up to this off-ramp here that this thing does have lowering springs on it, but it does have factory active shocks, which the valving is stiffened up a little bit since this is now in Sport Plus. But let's just pop it over into manual shift mode, give these paddles a try. I never really loved the whole paddles thing, but okay. Let's throw it into an off-ramp. Here we go, down into third. It feels pretty good, but again, the steering wheel is as dead as, I don't know. And that is not a enthusiastic noise coming out of there. It does feel a little lost. Like, is it competent? Yes. Is it a good car? Objectively, yes. But I don't feel anything when I'm driving this. Both literally and metaphorically. I feel nothing through the steering wheel or the pedals. It is a very good highway cruiser though. The biggest problem that I'm seeing here though is that if this had a manual, I'd probably be perfectly happy with it. This isn't the conclusion that I wanted to be reaching today. Oh, your headliner still exists too. Damn. Another point against the E46. I'm not sure if these are sport seats or not, but they are absolutely excellent. BMW at least still knows how to make a really good seat. I've got a bad back. My E46 is basically the only car in my entire fleet that I can drive comfortably for multiple hours at a time without stabbing lower back pains. And this definitely continues this trend. So I kind of think that my health has burdened me with a life of BMW ownership out of necessity. Let's go back into manual mode, manual Sport Plus, rip an on-ramp real quick, and this left turn here. The dynamic traction control is great. It just let me hang the tail out there. That was great. Okay, it won't shift unless you do. It's competent, and I hate competency. That's my thing. A car needs to be flawed. I don't like the Hellcat for the similar reason. Yes, I'm comparing a Hellcat to a 230i. The Dodge Hellcat has an incredibly linear, flat power delivery, and I hate it. The Scat Pack is 10 times more fun to drive because there is a sense of excitement and escalation as you rev it out. This car and the Hellcat, neither of them give you a reason to want to wring it out. It just goes in a perfectly by-the-books spreadsheet manner. It is a tax ledger on wheels. A very good Autobahn cruiser, but it's not poetry. Oh God, I'm turning into an automotive journalist. Everyone tries to be Jeremy Clarkson these days. I hate what I've become. A comfort mode feels basically the same. Oh, the steering got worse. Okay. What this does make me really want to know is I really want to drive an M2 now. An M2 CS with the stick, because I see the potential in this chassis. The chassis is good. The electronic power steering feels just like an old Z4. Elliot Alvis's Z4 had the electric power steering and it felt just as numb and uncommunicative as this did. From what I hear, the M2 has far better, more communicative steering, and of course a manual, which is inherently a fair bit more engaging. But at the price point compared to my ZHP, I don't know. I mean, this is also considering the fact that I'm comparing a lease to used car ownership, so one of these things you have equity and one of these things you don't. It is better than I expected though, because I expected this to drive like a Camry. I expected sort of a clout Camry out of this car, and what I got is actually significantly more engaging than I expected. It's so hard to say anything intelligent about this because my whole thoughts end up being, yes, it's a great car, except for the steering and the engine and the transmission. But other than that, yeah. I mean, for a daily, it depends. It really depends on what you want. Everything's a sliding scale. And personally, I, of course, slide towards the unreasonable enthusiast side of that scale because everything must be a manual and everything must be entertaining at all times. But if you slide a little bit more towards the I just want something more interesting to drive than a Camry, this is really a lot better than I thought it would be. Is it for me? I think I'm pretty happy with what I've got, which is rare, but well, there we have it. Now I can say I have driven a new BMW, or a newer one at least, a 230i. But do I think I would have been happier with that than my ZHP? Well, no, not at all. The ZHP just has so much more that is me. It's a much more Jake vehicle. If someone was to come up to me and be like, hey, should I buy an old E46 or lease a new 2 Series? Obviously, I would tell them to lease a new 2 Series. I am not that bad of a friend. Though really the real answer is just get, a Civic or a Corolla or an Accord or a Camry, depending on, what you like, or a Mazda 3. Honestly, there's so many good choices in small cars, and really front-wheel drive is fine for most people. But as for me, myself, I look at this list, I'm honestly kind of impressed with how little it has cost me, and even more impressed with the way the market is right now. I could almost sell that car for what I have into it. I'm not going to, of course. I'm going to continue to throw money at it like it's going out of style until I am just hopelessly upside down on it, but I have no intentions of ever selling it, so I'm perfectly okay with that. So really, this video surprised me in 2 ways. First of all, I didn't spend as much on this car as I thought, and second of all, that newer BMWs really aren't quite as bad as I was expecting. Sure, it's not as raw as like an E30 would be, but it's still definitely the enthusiast choice amongst its peers. There really isn't anything that's a whole lot more of an enthusiast car, especially an enthusiast rear-wheel drive car, back in 2017 to now, so I guess BMW's still doing it. As much as we talk crap on them for not making enthusiast cars, I guess they are still doing it. Though you can keep the 2 Series Grand Coupe far, far away from me, in a crusher where it belongs. Thanks for watching. I'm guessing if you push, yeah, it turns it all the way off, and then you can just go freaking bonkers. Push and hold this.
What?
Yeah, now...
I've never in my life figured that out.